'Cause when she scores, she makes the Fever sing. Kelsey on the wing. Kelsey, Kelsey on the wing. Every time she's on the ball, we know she's going to the hole. Our superstar from Ohio.
It was a night no one in Indiana will ever forget. The Fever were written off, their season already being dissected by analysts and mocked by critics. But then, in a performance that shook the league, Kelsey Mitchell and the Fever carved their names into history. It wasn't just about the points she poured in, or the comeback that seemed impossible just minutes earlier.
Money Mitch goes berserk in the second half, 0 points in the first quarter, finishes the game with over 38, nearly 38 points for Kelsey Mitchell.
It was about heart, defiance, and a refusal to accept defeat. With every shot falling and every cheer growing louder, Mitchell transformed from a scorer into a symbol of resilience.
Let's go, Kelsey Mitchell. Career high, 38 points, 34 in the second half. What a fucking game from Kelsey Mitchell.
The crowd inside the arena wasn't just watching a game, they were witnessing a statement. And when the final buzzer sounded, leaving head coach Stephanie White and fans in tears, it was clear that Fever had not only won, they had redefined themselves. This wasn't luck. This was history being made right before our eyes.
What a performance. Am I, going to change my mind on Kelsey Mitchell being the best player in this team? Hell no. The team was down 20. Kelsey Mitchell, first option hoops, got this team down 21 points. But my God, is Kelsey Mitchell clutch.
Before the Fever's historic moment unfolded, the reality was grim. The season had been a roller coaster of frustrations, injuries, and inconsistency, leaving fans with more questions than answers.
Indiana Fever needed this one bad, and they got this one.
The conversation had already shifted away from wins and playoff dreams, and instead towards draft picks, lottery odds, and rebuilding strategies. Commentators were openly speculating about who the Fever might target in the upcoming draft. Names like Lauren Betts were being debated, mock drafts were circulating online, and fans were already bracing themselves for another year of disappointment. It felt like the conclusion had been written long before the season was over. Indiana was destined for another reset. The team's struggles weren't just about numbers on a scoreboard. They reflected a franchise still searching for an identity in a league that was evolving fast, with stars across the WNBA lifting their franchises to higher levels. The Fever seemed stuck in a cycle of false hope and heartbreak. Every small spark of optimism seemed to fizzle out, whether due to injuries to key players or long stretches of offensive stagnation that made victories feel like accidents rather than expectations. To the average fan, the Fever were no longer a team to be feared, but a team to be pitied. And then came the whispers of frustration around head coach Stephanie White. While some defended her system and experience, others questioned whether her approach was holding the team back. Was the game plan too rigid? Were the players being boxed into roles that didn't fit their natural strengths? These doubts hung over the locker room like a shadow, with fans and analysts alike wondering how long the organization would stay patient. If the Fever couldn't turn things around soon, would White's future even be secure? Against this backdrop of despair, Kelsey Mitchell became the lone bright spot.
She is a major reason for why the Indiana Fever season was saved today. Maybe she wasn't the out-and-out reason why the Fever season was saved. And maybe you guys don't think that today, quote-unquote, 1,000,000% for sure, saved the Fever season.
A scorer known for her relentlessness, she provided flashes of brilliance that reminded fans why she was still considered one of the league's most dangerous offensive threats. But even her heroics often felt like they came too late. The kind of performances that went down as empty stats because the team couldn't find ways to translate them into meaningful wins. Heading into this game, no one expected history. Fans were already bracing for another loss, another painful reminder of how far the Fever still had to go. Some even argued that losing would be better for draft positioning, that falling short now would mean rising stronger later. But that kind of logic doesn't resonate with players on the court. Athletes don't step onto the hardwood to tank, they step on to fight, to win, and to prove everyone wrong. And on this night, with the odds stacked against them and fans silently preparing for more disappointment, something shifted. The Fever, led by Mitchell, refused to play the role of a defeated team. What was about to unfold wasn't just a game, it was a transformation, a defiance of expectations that would leave their season, their coach, and their fan base forever changed.
I think it was huge for the season. I think the Indiana Fever, unless the Sparks come back in this game, are probably going to make the playoffs.
When the Fever looked finished, buried under a mountain of doubt and a scoreboard that painted an ugly picture, Kelsey Mitchell stepped into the spotlight with a determination that couldn't be ignored. For years, she had carried the label of a pure scorer, someone capable of lighting up the stat sheet, but not necessarily carrying a franchise. That narrative was about to be shattered in spectacular fashion. Mitchell didn't just score, she erupted, turning the game into her personal stage. Her performance wasn't gradual, it was explosive. By halftime, frustration hung heavy in the air. The Fever trailed badly, and it seemed as though the night would end in another familiar disappointment. But Mitchell came out of the locker room like a storm no one saw coming. Shot after shot dropped, each basket a dagger into the opposing team's confidence. In just one half of basketball, she piled on 34 points, finishing the game. With a career-high 3-8, every drive to the basket, every jumper from the wing, every fearless pull-up felt like an act of defiance against all the doubts surrounding her. The arena transformed with each make. Fans who had been quiet suddenly roared with belief. Chants of her name echoed through the stands, not as empty support, but as a recognition that something historic was unfolding. Even those who had criticized her for being one-dimensional couldn't look away on this night. She wasn't just scoring, she was inspiring. What made Mitchell's eruption even more powerful was the way she carried herself in the heat of the moment. She wasn't rattled, she wasn't hesitant, she was relentless. Her confidence was contagious. Teammates began feeding off her energy, pushing harder on defense, running the floor with urgency, and trusting that if they got her the ball, something magical would happen. In many ways, Mitchell had become the engine of the Fever's entire identity. Stephanie White, on the sideline, could only watch as her guard turned into a force of nature. For a coach often criticized for rigid game plans, this moment was different. The strategy wasn't drawn up on a clipboard, it was unfolding organically through Mitchell's sheer willpower. It was as though the team collectively realized that their season, their pride, and maybe even their future rested on riding the hot hand of their star scorer. Opponents scrambled to adjust. Double teams came flying her way. Defenders tried to force the ball out of her hands, but Mitchell refused to be contained. She split traps, knocked down contested jumpers, and attacked the rim with the same energy in the final minutes that she had at the start of the half. Her relentlessness broke the opponent's spirit and electrified the Fever's bench. By the time the final buzzer rang, fans were in tears. Stephanie White was visibly emotional, and Mitchell stood tall as the undeniable hero of the night. This wasn't just a career game, it was the kind of performance that etches a player's name into the history books. The Fever hadn't just won a game, they had created a moment that would define their season and shift the conversation about Kelsey Mitchell forever. Kelsey Mitchell's performance was the kind of night players dream about: unstoppable scoring, deafening cheers, and headlines that echo across the league. But beneath the euphoria lies a deeper truth about the Indiana Fever. When Mitchell is the first option, everything depends on whether she's on fire or ice cold. That reality is both the team's greatest strength and its most dangerous weakness. Mitchell has always been known as a relentless scorer. She thrives on attacking defenders, pulling up for mid-range jumpers, and hitting deep shots that swing momentum in an instant. When she's locked in, the Fever look nearly unstoppable. The comeback from a 21-point deficit proved just how powerful her offense can be. One player changed the entire outcome of the game. But therein lies the risk. If Mitchell has an off night, the Fever often collapse without much of a backup plan. Their success lives and dies by her shooting percentage. This isn't an indictment of her talent, it's a recognition of her role. In the modern WNBA, elite teams rarely depend on a pure bucket getter as their main engine. They balance scoring with playmaking, using stars who can both create for themselves and elevate teammates. Mitchell, however, leans heavily toward the scoring side. While she did notch 6 assists in her historic game, Critics point out that those came largely because of her overwhelming usage. Her natural instinct is to score, not to distribute, and that tunnel vision can limit the team's offensive versatility. Stephanie White's challenge as head coach becomes clear here. Do you build the offense entirely around Mitchell's scoring, knowing it makes the team unpredictable from night to night? Or do you try to mold her into more of a secondary option, pairing her with a true playmaker like Caitlin Clark to create balance? Both paths carry risks. Lean too hard on Mitchell, and the Fever risk being one-dimensional, pull her back to much, and you risk wasting her best asset, her ability to get buckets against any defense. Fans see this duality play out game after game. When Mitchell is hot, the Fever can look like contenders. She drains shots from every angle, fuels comebacks, and inspires the crowd. But when defenses clamp down and her shots stop falling, the Fever suddenly looked vulnerable. The offense stagnates, teammates struggle to step up, and frustration builds. It's a precarious identity for a team trying to climb the standings and prove they belong among the league's elite. Still, nights like this historic game remind everyone why she is so beloved. Even if her role as a first option is debated, no one can deny her heart, her fire, and her ability to single-handedly change the outcome of a game. The double-edged sword of Kelsey Mitchell is simple. She can make the Fever soar, or she can expose their weaknesses. And as long as she remains the focal point, every game will carry that high wire, tension thrilling for fans, but risky for the franchise's long-term goals. Kelsey Mitchell's breakout performance reignited a debate that has followed her. For years, what exactly is her role in the long-term vision of the Indiana Fever? Is she the franchise's centerpiece, the player you build an entire offense around? Or is she best suited as a lethal second option, a scorer who thrives when defenses are focused elsewhere? The answer isn't simple, and it divides fans, analysts, and even those within the organization. On one side, supporters argue that Mitchell has earned the right to be the face of the Fever. She's been the steady force through years of rebuilding, loyal to the franchise and relentless on the floor. Her scoring consistency is undeniable. Few players in the league can catch fire like Mitchell. Nights, like her career high, remind everyone that she has the ability to carry the team when everything is on the line. To her defenders, building around her is not only smart basketball, but also a reward for her loyalty and resilience. But the other side paints a different picture. They point to her style of play, tunnel vision at times, limited as a facilitator, and reliant on difficult shots. These critics argue that Mitchell can't be the primary option on a championship-caliber team. The WNBA has evolved, and the blueprint for success revolves around versatile stars who can both score and create opportunities for others. Look at the teams consistently contending for titles. They balance offense with multiple threats, ensuring no single player carries the entire burden. For the Fever, that's where Caitlin Clark enters the conversation. Clark, even while battling injuries, represents the archetype of the modern franchise cornerstone and elite playmaker, who not only scores, but also elevates teammates. Pairing her vision and passing with Mitchell's scoring seems like the perfect formula on paper. Clark could draw defensive attention, freeing Mitchell for cleaner looks, while Mitchell's gravity as a scorer would prevent defenses from collapsing entirely on Clark. In this scenario, Mitchell thrives as the second option, the ultimate bucket getter, who no longer has to bear the crushing weight of carrying the team. Every night, the real challenge lies with Stephanie White and the front office. Can they find the balance that maximizes both players without forcing either into a role that doesn't fit? Asking Mitchell to suddenly become a pass-first guard would waste her greatest weapon, but refusing to acknowledge the need for balance would keep the Fever trapped in the same cycle too, dependent on her streaky brilliance. Fans, of course, are torn. Some cling to the emotional attachment of seeing Mitchell as the face of the Fever, while others are already looking to Clark. As the savior of the franchise, the debate has only intensified after this historic game because it proved both sides right. Mitchell can absolutely take over and win games on her own, but the question remains, can she do it consistently enough to be the main pillar of a championship run? This tension between past loyalty and future ambition is what makes the Fever's story so compelling. Kelsey Mitchell has cemented her place in Fever history. But the debate over her role in the future is only just beginning. For much of the season, the idea of the Indiana Fever making the playoffs felt like wishful thinking. Too many injuries, too many blown leads, and too many nights where the team looked overwhelmed had pushed the conversation toward the draft lottery. But Kelsey Mitchell's historic eruption flipped that narrative upside down. Suddenly, instead of talking about ping-pong balls and mock drafts, fans and analysts were daring to dream about postseason basketball. And those dreams rest almost entirely on Mitchell's shoulders. Her ability to score at will gives the Fever something most struggling teams don't have: a puncher's chance. Even against stronger, deeper opponents, Mitchell's presence means the Fever can't be counted out. If she's hitting shots, Indiana can hang with anybody. That's the beauty and the burden of her role. When she's locked in, the Fever look like a dangerous underdog nobody wants to face. But when defenses succeed in slowing her down, the offense sputters and the team collapses. The looming question for fans and the coaching staff alike is whether Mitchell's brilliance can hold up under playoff pressure. Postseason basketball is a different beast, where defenses are tighter, scouting is sharper, and every possession carries more weight. Opponents will scheme specifically to wear her down, throwing double teams and forcing the ball out of her. Hence, can she still thrive when the spotlight is brighter and the margin for error is razor thin? That uncertainty is what makes her role both thrilling and precarious. Of course, the potential return of Caitlin Clark hovers over everything. Even if she's not fully healthy, her presence changes the equation. A 75% Clark drawing attention from defenses would open the floor for Mitchell to operate with more freedom. Imagine Mitchell's scoring paired with Clark's playmaking. It's the kind of duo that could instantly shift the Fever from fringe playoff hopefuls to legitimate spoilers. The prospect of seeing them share the floor in a playoff atmosphere has fans buzzing, even if the odds remain slim. Stephanie White knows the stakes. She's coaching a team that isn't built to tank. No matter what some fans say about long-term rebuilding, players and coaches live in the now. Winning games, even if it means sacrificing lottery odds, builds culture. It teaches young players how to compete under pressure, and it shows fans that the franchise is fighting for relevance again. And at the center of it all is Mitchell, the heartbeat of their playoff push. Every game down the stretch feels monumental. 2 wins in a tough stretch could keep Indiana alive. A poor shooting night could bury them. That's the volatility of resting so much on one star player. But for fans who have endured season after season of heartbreak, there's something exhilarating about the unpredictability. With Mitchell leading the charge, the Fever don't just have hope, they have a reason to believe the impossible might actually happen. And if the Fever do punch their ticket to the postseason, it will be remembered as the year Kelsey Mitchell carried them there, rewriting both her legacy and the team's future. The Fever's sudden spark of life under Kelsey. Mitchell raises a tough question that every rebuilding franchise eventually faces. Is it smarter to chase the short-term thrill of a playoff push, or to accept more losses now in exchange for better draft positioning later? On paper, the answer seems simple. A lottery pick could land Indiana another cornerstone to pair with Caitlin Clark, potentially setting up the franchise for years of success. But in practice, basketball isn't played on paper, it's played on the court, and players like Mitchell don't lace up their sneakers to lose intentionally. That's where the conflict lies. From a management perspective, tanking might look like the logical move. After all, the WNBA draft has produced stars who can change the direction of an entire franchise almost overnight. Adding another elite piece next to Clark could give the Fever the depth and versatility they desperately need. But the players and coaches live in a different reality. For them, every win matters. Every comeback builds confidence. Every playoff appearance, no matter how brief, hardens a team's culture and teaches them how to fight under pressure. Kelsey Mitchell embodies that mentality. Her historic game wasn't just about points, it was about pride. She reminded everyone that athletes are wired to compete, not to roll over for the sake of future odds. Her performance reignited belief in the locker room, a belief that can't be measured in draft percentages or scouting reports. For her, leading the Fever into the playoffs, even as a low seed, means more than finishing the year with a higher lottery pick. It's about proving that the Fever aren't pushovers, that they belong in the league's most competitive moments. but the risk is undeniable. By fighting for wins now, the Fever could sacrifice a chance at a higher draft slot, potentially missing out on a generational player. And history shows that middle-of-the-pack teams often get stuck too good to land a star in the draft, but not strong enough to truly contend. That's the nightmare scenario for fans who think long-term, a cycle of mediocrity where emotional highs mask structural flaws. Stephanie White and the Fever front office are walking a tightrope. Leaning too hard into short-term success could delay the rebuild, but leaning too hard into losses risks destroying the fragile momentum the team is finally building. Fans are just as divided. Some insist that building a winning culture now will pay dividends later, while others argue that chasing meaningless wins today is a mistake when the future could be brighter with another high. Draft pick, at the heart of it all, is Mitchell's fire. She won't accept losing. That relentless drive forces the Fever to fight, no matter what the analysts say about percentages and projections. And maybe that's what makes this season so captivating. It's not just about wins or losses, it's about identity. Are the Fever a rebuilding team waiting for tomorrow, or are they a fighting team demanding respect today? Mitchell's brilliance forces them and all of us to confront that question head. When the final buzzer sounded and the Fever walked off the court victorious, the significance of the night went far beyond the scoreboard. For Kelsey Mitchell, this wasn't just another high-scoring performance. It was the moment that redefined her legacy. For years, she had carried the reputation of being a talented scorer who could light up defenses but not necessarily tilt the balance of a franchise. That perception changed the second she dragged her team back from a 21-point hole and left fans and even her coach in tears. Mitchell's legacy had always been complicated. She was celebrated for her relentlessness, her ability to score in bunches, and her loyalty to Indiana through the franchise's leanest years. But critics often labeled her as one-dimensional, a player who piled up stats without shifting the outcome of games in a meaningful way. This historic night silenced that narrative. For once, the points weren't empty. They mattered. They were decisive. They saved the Fever season, at least for now. What makes this night stand out is not just the numbers. Though 38 points will always look impressive in the box score, it's the context. The Fever were staring down another collapse, another night that would fuel doubts about their direction. Instead, Mitchell delivered one of the most clutch performances in franchise history. A reminder that sheer willpower can alter the course of a season. That kind of performance sticks. Fans don't forget it, teammates don't forget it, and history won't forget it either. There's also the emotional impact to consider. Seeing Stephanie White visibly emotional on the sidelines, fans crying in the stands, and the locker room buzzing afterward revealed something powerful. Mitchell's performance wasn't just individual brilliance, it was collective healing. It reminded everyone connected to the Fever that they still had reasons to believe, reasons to fight, and reasons to hope. That ripple effect will echo through the rest of the season, and perhaps even longer. For Mitchell personally, this was a statement to the entire WNBA. She proved she's not just a scorer who thrives in meaningless moments. She's a game-changer who can swing momentum, inspire teammates, and ignite an arena when everything feels lost. That's the kind of reputation that elevates a player from being remembered as talented to being celebrated as legendary. Of course, legacies aren't built on one night alone. Mitchell still faces the challenge of sustaining this level of play and proving she can thrive as part of a winning system. But this game, this comeback, gives her a signature moment that players dream about. No matter what happens moving forward, she'll always have this night, the night she created history, the night she turned tears into triumph, and the night she carved her name deeper into the story of the Indiana Fever. And sometimes, all it takes is one performance like this to change the way the world remembers you forever. Kelsey Mitchell's historic performance didn't just shake up the Indiana Fever's season, it reignited a larger conversation that's been brewing across the WNBA for years. How do we value pure scorers in today's game? In a league that increasingly prioritizes efficiency, versatility, and playmaking, players like Mitchell challenge the narrative. She isn't the most balanced star, but when she gets hot, she's one of the most unstoppable forces in the league. And that raises a critical question: should pure scorers be embraced as franchise cornerstones, or are they best suited as complementary weapons? For much of modern basketball, both men's and women's, the emphasis has shifted toward all-around. Players. Stars are expected not only to score, but also to defend, facilitate, and elevate teammates. The argument is that this balance builds sustainable contenders. But performances like Mitchell's are reminders of an undeniable truth. Sometimes, nothing beats a player who can simply go out and get a bucket, no matter the circumstance. That kind of firepower can't be taught, and it often makes the difference in games that feel out of reach. Mitchell's game forces analysts and fans to reconsider how they define value. If she were judged solely by efficiency metrics or assist-to-turnover ratios, she might not be in the same breath as other league stars. But when she turns a 21-point deficit into a comeback win, those advanced stats fade into the background. What people remember are the shots that fell, the crowd that erupted, and the outcome she changed with her own two hands. In moments like these, the bucket-getter archetype proves its worth in the most dramatic way possible. The debate stretches beyond Mitchell. Across the WNBA, there are players with similar reputation scorers who may not check every box, but still possess the ability to swing games with individual brilliance. They often become lightning rods for discussion. Are they selfish, or are they essential? Are they liabilities in the long term, or are they the spark that keeps franchises relevant? The answer usually depends on perspective. Coaches want reliability. Analysts want efficiency, but fans want moments. They want to remember the night their star dropped 38 and refused to let the team fold. Mitchell's performance also highlights a tension within league storytelling. The WNBA, like all professional sports, thrives on narratives. Super teams, dynasties, and rising stars dominate headlines. But there's something uniquely powerful about an underdog scorer carrying a franchise on her back. It taps into the emotional core of sports. The idea that one player, through sheer will, can defy expectations and remind everyone why we watch in the first place. By creating history, Mitchell not only gave Indiana a season-defining moment, but also reasserted the value of scorers in a league that sometimes undervalues them. She may never be the prototypical all-around superstar, but her ability to electrify a game proves that there's still room and still a need for players who live to put the ball in the basket. And that broader WNBA narrative will never be the same after nights like this. When the dust settled, Kelsey Mitchell's performance wasn't just about numbers on a stat sheet, it was about rewriting the story of an entire franchise. The Indiana Fever, once counted out and dismissed as lottery-bound, found new life in a single night of defiance. Stephanie White stood on the sidelines, tears in her eyes, as fans roared with pride, knowing they had witnessed more than just a win. They had seen history. Mitchell proved she isn't just a scorer, she's a fighter, a leader, and the spark that can change everything. But the larger question remains, can this fire be sustained, and can it carry the Fever into a future built on more than hope? For now, none of that matters. What matters is that on this night, Indiana believed again, and Kelsey Mitchell forever etched her name into the legacy of the Fever.